My name's Fred McNeil, and you're watching QAC TV 7. And you're watching a program called Papa's World. And we're talking about Papa Hemingway's world. We're talking books, we're talking with authors, and we're sharing with you some interesting things which we hope will encourage you to read. And maybe even more importantly, go out and buy some books and get your children and grandchildren to read, all right? I'm very fortunate to have with me Hal Wilson today. Not the Prime Minister of England, all right, but the local author. Hal, thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Fred.
I was going to share with you off here my Harold Wilson story. Remember, he was a great pipe smoker.
Mm-hmm.
He was famous for putting his pipe in these lovely tweed jackets. Next thing you turn over, his jacket was on fire, and all these members of Parliament are patting him. So it was great. Well, Hal, there's a little bit of hope. There's a little spring in the air today, and I think we might make it, right?
Well, we can hope.
We can hope, all right. Now, let's hear about Hal Wilson. Where are you from?
Well, right now I live on Kent Island.
Okay.
We live in Chester,
All right.
and however, I grew up in Delray Beach, Florida.
Oh, Florida guy.
And
Okay.
yeah.
Why were you here this winter?
Florida guy. Well, I'm here this winter because I've lived here for the
many
last
years?
25
Okay,
years.
okay.
Not on the island, but in the area
Okay,
anyway.
all right, okay. My wife for the first time ever said, Fred, you know the snowbird people that go down to Florida? Maybe we better look into that. All right, so born and raised in Florida.
Yeah.
Schools?
Yeah, I went worked my way north.
Okay.
Went to Wake Forest College.
Oh, great school.
Now Wake Forest University.
Yes, the Deacon.
All the community colleges have become colleges now.
You put university after the name.
And the colleges have become universities. So
Right,
Wake
right.
Forest University, and then went further north, went up to Massachusetts,
Oh, okay.
and got my master's degree
Where-
at the
where-
Andover Newton Theological School
Oh, okay.
in Newton Center, Massachusetts.
Now, are you an ordained minister?
I am an ordained minister, even though I haven't served a church or served in the ministry for quite a few years now.
Let me go back to earlier days. High school, Florida.
Yeah.
Sports guy, acting guy. What was Hal doing as a 16, 17, 18-year-old?
Oh,
That you can share on air.
I was as a high school student. I was totally insane. I weighed 125 pounds
Like me, we're little guys.
and thought that I could be a running back in football in high
Lord.
school, which I did. So
Okay, terrific.
I did in high school. I did football.
Tough football in Florida. That's
Yeah,
right, yeah.
did football and track.
Okay, so you're a sports guy.
Back and grew up, but it's probably important to note I grew up in the 50s.
Right, okay,
And,
same time. we grew
the
up
schools were segregated, and
It's a different world.
so yeah, it was a very, very different world.
Now, besides the track and field and the 120-pound power back, did you do any writing? I mean, did writing and
No,
no,
I didn't. I didn't write a word back.
Okay, just when you went there?
Only under duress
Okay.
in class.
The senior English teacher beated you.
And that was true in college too. I
Okay.
didn't do much writing
Okay.
in college either.
But we're going to go to college in a second. How about mom and dad? Writers, teach anything? I mean, anything there?
No.
No. I always try to look for a thread. There's no threads here.
No, my parents. My parents owned a business.
Okay.
My father used his GI Bill
All right.
to go into
World War
business
II
when he
GI
got
Bill,
out
yeah,
of when he got out of the Navy after the Second World War.
Okay.
Used his GI Bill to start a business, a woman's clothing business
In Delray
in
Beach.
Delray Beach, and then in Spring Lake, New Jersey, and
okay.
they did fairly well. They were, even though they were not formally educated. I don't think either one of them finished high school.
Just hard work.
Hard work and good common sense.
Okay.
And good intuition. And my mother particularly knew what women wanted.
Okay.
And one quick story about her.
Please.
As a young woman, they set their business in Delray for women back then in their 50s and 60s. And my mother, I said, why don't you have young people in here? My mother used to say, I don't want young people in here. She said, my clientele, they already have their money.
Okay, so she catered to a certain audience.
And that's who we're catering to, and that's what they did.
What type of stuff? I mean, hats? I'm just thinking 50s people really dressed.
No, there was a real transition.
Okay.
I remember my mother sitting with that horrible smell of airplane glue and shells, making shell jewelry.
Okay.
And she would make shell jewelry late into the night, and she would sell it all the next day.
Is that casual? What I call that casual wear? Or no?
Oh, back in the there's a word for costume jewelry or something like that. But she did that. And they sold bathing suits, and then they got into a more upper scale blouses and dresses, and then they got a little bit more upper scale even than that.
Was it under the Wilson label, or was there a label?
No. She bought Cause Cobb, and they would go to Connecticut and do their buying in New York,
That was pretty.
But anyway, that was high school.
Oh, that was great.
That was growing up.
Brothers and sisters?
One sister.
Okay, all right. Now, so we leave Delray Beach. We're going to be at Demon Deacons. Is that who they?
The Demon Deacons.
Okay. Tell me about Wake Forest. I know you weren't playing. Well, you might have been halfback at 125.
No, I don't think so. That was a little different level. I did track initially, but
and Wake Forest.
Yeah, they were a little too quick for me.
Distance guy, sprinter
guy,
or
I was a sprinter.
Sprinter. Okay, all right.
Yeah.
Now, how about at Wake Forest? Major theology at that point?
I majored in philosophy and in French.
We're that's
those two, a double major.
4 years fraternity or writing then, or any?
No writing.
Just going after the BA.
Writing even then, just trying to get a degree and survive.
Okay, all right. So we get our bachelor's degree from Wake Forest. Immediately to theology seminary.
I went from Wake Forest to Andover Newton Theological School in Newton because I was set at that point. My trajectory was to be a minister, and
that was a life goal.
That was my interest through high school as well. I kind of knew that was what I wanted to do.
How would that come from? You had a good minister, a good church experience, or just something?
I have no idea, Fred, where that came from. We went to the Baptist church. I was active. My parents weren't. I was active as a kid in the youth movements and that kind of business, and just something I wanted.
You wanted to do?
I wanted to do, and so I followed it through.
Now, was that 3 years? Seminary 3 years?
3 years. 3 years. There was a 1 year internship, but you could opt to write a thesis rather than doing an internship.
Okay.
So I wrote a thesis and got my degree and got out.
Okay.
Yeah.
What was your thesis?
Well, my thesis was combining it with my interest in French.
Okay.
I wrote my thesis on the influence of the Christian theology on the French existentialists of the post-Second World War period, Camus.
So that is your philosophy background, right, from undergraduate, going in theology. Now, you finish seminary, right to a church or parish? Or,
no, actually, it was a minor circuitous trip. I went back to Florida to
Mom and Dad there, or they?
No. I went to Jacksonville. To a private boys' school, military school actually, called the Bowl School, which is still in Jacksonville, still functioning. And I taught French for a year.
Oh, that would have been interesting.
And it was very interesting. And I decided I actually decided I did not want to deal with this intellectual level for the rest of my life.
Teaching's a challenge. That's why we respect teaching.
So,
I mean, it takes a
so-
special skill set.
So I left and took a church back up in New England.
Okay, so you went back.
And went back to Massachusetts.
Where in Mass?
I went to a little town called Charlton, Massachusetts. Now, nobody's ever heard of
I was
Charlton.
going to say west or east?
It's in the center of the state. It's basically where you turn left to go to Hartford.
Okay.
From Boston.
Is that close to Springfield, or am I off here?
But it's north of Springfield.
Okay, so
you
you're getting
turn
to
left
Snow
and go
Valley.
to Springfield and on to
Okay.
Hartford. But the sense was that that people know the area for Old Sturbridge Village.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Like Williamsburg.
I've been there
And the next town over was Sturbridge
Okay.
and Old Sturbridge Village. So
Okay,
we
good.
were there. I was there for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
I
Now,
think.
talk to me about your first church experience. I mean, was it preaching fire and brimstone, or was it...
I was very, very fortunate in
Was
my
this a
first
Baptist church?
No.
No.
Oh no, the Baptists didn't want me. When I was coming back to New England, I went to Boston. I
Right.
went to see the Baptists,
Okay.
and I said, I'm looking for a church. And the
You
Baptist.
have your degree.
No, yeah, I'm
yeah.
all
certified and everything, yeah.
Years experience, a
Okay.
year's experience teaching those kids down in Florida.
Okay.
And
That was a religious experience.
that's
it
right.
sounds
That
like,
was a
yeah.
very religious experience. But the Baptist said, "Well, we don't have anything open."
Nothing.
I said, "Okay." So I went up the street to the congregational
Okay.
headquarters,
Okay.
and I said, "I'm looking for a church." And they said, "We've got this nice small church
Okay.
out in Charlton, Massachusetts. Why don't you go candidate out there?
Okay.
See if they would like to have you." And they said, "But you'll have to become a Congregationalist."
Okay.
And I said, "Well, what
It's a
problem
big deal, yeah.
what
It's a
problem
big deal.
is that?
I want a job."
I can do that. Yeah, we have to eat." And so I went out there, and I have to say, Fred, that that I was fortunate in the sense that I was and still am incredibly liberal.
Okay.
And my theology, the French existentialist, the
You're
whole
Malcolm
business.
Boyd, are you running with me, Jesus type thing, I think.
Well, not
yeah.
quite Malcolm Boyd,
Okay,
but I was more philosophical
Okay.
than
You're in New England.
more
liberal
philosophical than theological,
Okay.
and these people were just wonderful.
If it worked,
to
it was a
me.
good match. It was a
Oh,
good match.
they accepted my crazy ideas, and
let me just.
and they were the ones. They for instance, this was the height of the civil rights movement,
right.
and they sent me to Selma for the march.
Yeah.
And so that's the kind of
You were
people
part of
they
that.
were.
We can do
They-
that. That's a whole separate show.
they,
We're going to get
they
into
were
that.
wonderful.
I bet
They
they
were, and I was very fortunate
How
to be
you're
there.
25, 26, or am I close? How old were
At
you?
that, yeah, about
You're a
that.
young
21, let's see, I was 21, 22, yeah, about 23, 24 when
All
I
right.
got there.
So you had a great experience. How many people in the parish or
We
church?
had a very good experience
Yeah.
there. Well, I think it was a very small church. We had maybe 200 members.
Still a good
you
size.
know.
That's a good size.
Yeah.
Now, single, married, kids?
No, I
at
was
the-
married at
Oh, you
the
were married
time.
at the time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, Marilyn and I were married when I was in seminary.
Okay, so you spend, you say 5 years there, 6 years?
I spent about 5 years there, and just financially, for one reason, needed to move on. And I wanted to see what a little bit more of the world looked like.
So where do we go from
Well,
small town Mass?
I went due north
Okay.
from the Connecticut border down there in Massachusetts to the New Hampshire border.
Oh, Lord. We're getting colder
by
every time.
north to the mill town of Athol, Massachusetts. And I served the Congregational Church there for 3 years.
A little bit bigger?
Little bigger, yeah.
Okay.
A little
But financially, a little more sounder, maybe.
yeah, a little bit more
Okay.
money, and we needed that. We had a daughter by then,
Oh,
and
great.
we had to.
You're feeding 3 mouths all of a sudden.
Yeah, oh,
right?
yeah.
And it made a little
Yeah,
difference.
well, Marilyn was working too, so
Okay.
she
What
was
did
always.
Marilyn do? She
Marilyn worked in Worcester at the Velumoid Company, and
Okay.
she was an administrative assistant there,
Okay,
and
all
did
right,
quite
okay.
well.
So you had the best of both worlds, private enterprise and religion, right?
No,
It was a
exactly.
good deal. So and you kept from there, where do we go from that part of Massachusetts?
Well,
New Hampshire?
I was 3 years there, and I served on a nonprofit housing committee in the
Okay.
area to do low income. We called it low
Yeah,
income
help
housing
with-
back
help with
then.
housing,
It's
sure.
got a number of names
Yeah.
since then. But I served on their housing committee, new nonprofit organization, and they said to me one day, "Why don't you come and work for us?"
Oh, full time?
Yeah.
Full time, yeah.
And I said, well, where else am I going to find someone to teach me to do something entirely new and pay me for
Oh,
it?
yeah, great thing.
That's in line with the
your
kind of
philosophical
social
beliefs, yeah.
work and philosophical attitude that I'm interested in. So I did.
Okay.
I went to work for them. And
So this is helping with, was it public housing or?
no, we didn't. We did a little bit of public housing, but primarily it was a rural housing organization serving most of Worcester County,
Okay.
Mass, that big center
Right,
county
sure.
in Massachusetts. We served them, but we actually built single-family housing. We built some small 6-8 unit apartment buildings in these rural
And these were people who
communities.
needed financial help with housing?
There
Yes?
is an, and still in existence, an amazing program through the Department of Agriculture. And back then, it's called Rural Development
Right,
now. It was
sure.
called the Farmers Home
Right,
Administration.
Farmers
back
Home
then.
Loans.
Yeah, oh, no, exactly,
yeah.
and that's what we worked with.
Okay, all right.
We helped people get farmers' home loans, and then we would build a house
Okay.
for them.
And Massachusetts was exciting. At that time, you had the Kennedys, you had Senator Brooks, you had the Salton Stalls. You had,
Senator Brooke became a good friend,
Oh, wow,
and
okay.
Senator Kennedy was out a number of times to see us, and but Brooke was a wonderful man, despite his mother in the nursing home thing.
Yeah, okay.
Brooke was a
good man.
fantastic man, and from there, I came down to run to D.C.
Okay, so you left Massachusetts, come down to
Came
D.C.
to run.
And where are we, the 80s?
This
jumping
was.
ahead?
I came to D.C. in 1977.
Oh, it's 77.
We came to D.C. and I came to be the executive director of an organization called the Housing Assistance Council, which still exists in D.C.
It's a national organization?
Yeah, a national organization doing similar kind of housing work, only with the Housing Assistance Council, we made grants and loans to local organizations like the one I had just been running in Massachusetts, across the rural United States.
Oh, wow, okay.
And Brooke, I remember I testified a number of times, and Brooke would always show up to introduce me. And
it's not a bad intro, is it?
oh, he was just a wonderful man, very helpful. And Republican or Democrat, the programs were very popular.
Sure.
And so we had very little trouble with the Congress getting funding and keeping the programs running and funded. And of course, Brooke, as a Republican, was very active. Kennedy, was as a Democrat, was very helpful to us, as well as other congressional members across the United States.
What we're going to do, the audience is going to be screaming at me, Fred, you missed the whole Selma March thing. But I promise you and the audience, we're going to do another show on that if you'll come back, all right? Now, let's get into, I want to get into your writing, okay? And I apologize. We're going to get you back, and we can, the whole, the war on poverty in the 70s, the money being spent by the federal government, there's a whole show there, all right? How about, let me skip ahead. All right, I apologize.
Sure.
I'm doing this. All right.
No, that's fine.
So, Wake Forest, train. How did you get into writing?
Well, Actually, I always had ideas. And of course, in my working life, I wrote an awful lot.
Sure. You're writing grants.
I published it. Well, no, I was writing about housing. I was publishing in real estate magazines nationally. I was writing testimony. I was writing. I was on the President's Housing Commission, and I wrote the rural portion that went into that. There was just a lot of writing that I did.
The skill was being developed
while I was working. All nonfiction, obviously. At least I hope it was not.
You told everybody.
We purported it to be nonfiction.
There are probably a couple of people saying you're a dreamer, but go ahead and write this stuff. Okay, all right. So you've been writing, okay.
Yeah, and then I retired, and when I retired. And I don't remember, I think it was, I don't know, about 12 years ago now. I started writing fiction, and that book is the result of my then
Tell us about that book. What's that book title, and what's it about?
Well, that book is called The Night Blooming Ceres and Other Stories. And the night... It's a novella. It's a novella and 5 short stories. The novella is really The Night Blooming Ceres. And the book is about people who, no matter how difficult their circumstances or how hard life treats them, and they are both good people and not such good people, but the attitude is that they never consider themselves as victims. They always, through my stories, consider themselves as people who are going to take on their
whatever
life
the challenge is, they're going to go
and do something with it. And that's
what fits in, by the way, I think with your liberal philosophy of life, probably, right? I can build houses. There's
little question. When I was a minister, there were these 2 spinster sisters.
In Massachusetts,
back at Charlton, and one of them was the organist, and the other one just brought flowers and hovered around. I got a call one night that said, Reverend Wilson, they said, we have a night blooming ceres, and
this is one of the spinsters calling me.
It's one of the sisters, Florence. It said, we have a night blooming ceres. It blooms once a year at midnight, and tonight's the night.
Be there.
and they said, would you like to come over and see the flowers bloom? Marilyn, my wife, says, yeah, right. You're gonna You're gonna go over there at midnight because they go. So I did, and the plant bloomed at midnight, and we had tea and we had cakes.
A regular ceremony and a little party.
But I got to thinking about that flower, the night blooming ceres, and there are 2 spinster sisters in this book. It's clear where they came from, and they've got their difficulties and their problems. But the point of the night blooming ceres is that the minister Motes in the story is invited over to see the ceres. Now, their night blooming ceres in the book goes all the way up to the ceiling and comes across. And she shows it to him, and he looks at it. And she said, you know, Reverend Motes, we're kind of like that night blooming ceres. She said, our feet are in the soil. We cannot go anywhere. We're pegged here in this spot. But we flower all over. And she said, I like to think, Motes, that the blossoms are our imagination. And we flower and we move through our imagination like this flower, like this night blooming cereus. So that's the name. That's the name of it at any rate. And then there are a number of stories. A number of them are based on experiences.
That you've had. Okay. Now, is this still in print? I mean, can people?
You can get it. Yeah.
Let's stop right now and tell the audience. Remember, that's what we are here. Okay. Where and how can they get that?
Well, I'm going to be very honest. Sure. They can get it on Amazon.
Okay.
However, it is horribly overpriced on Amazon.
Only a minister would say that.
That's right. That's why I have to. It's horribly overpriced. Okay. What they should do is email me.
And share that, please. Share that.
Email me at Wilson Writings. WILSON WRITINGS @gmail.com. The book is $23, and I will send them a copy of this book. Okay. I have a number of them.
Now, Hal, do me a favor, give that one more time. How the contact? If I want the book, the author's saving you money. Okay. What do they do?
They should contact me at Wilson Writings. WILSON WRITINGS @gmail.com. The other thing they can do is to find my address is to go on my website.
Okay, and you want to tell them what
my website is www.haroldowilson.com. So it's my name with my middle initial .com, and they'll find my email address on there and a bunch of other stuff. Quite frankly.
Now look, we're going to run out of time for this show, but we're going to schedule. I want to do two things. All right, we're going to have you read before we go. Sure. But before that, you do want to share with us what you're doing right now, because I was, before we went on air, I was impressed with both of them. Tell them what everyone you're doing right now in terms of some radio stuff and working with fiction.
Right. Well, now I'm writing. And I'm publishing primarily on my website. So people want to read my stuff, they can go to my website and they can read the short story. This little piece I'm going to read is coming out of. In addition, I'm the fiction editor for the Delmarva Review, which is the Eastern Shore Writers Association's literary piece that is published once a year.
Okay.
And also, I host a radio program on Delmarva Public Radio, and that also is found on my website. I have a link to all of the broadcasts on my website.
All the ones
that if you see one you're interested in, you hit the link and it takes you right to that broadcast on Delmarva Public Radio.
Great. Now I can see there's 500 people out there. I missed the website, so how about one more time the website?
Yeah, the website, www.haroldowilson.com.
Okay, great. And that has everything from your latest writings as your broadcasts on local Delaware, what I call NPR affiliate, which is some great stuff. Well, let's do this for this show. And look, I want to promise everybody out there, after we finish filming this, I'm going to twist Harold's arm here and get a date, because I want to hear all about Selma. I want to the housing stuff. I mean, we've just scratched the surface. How about you have a selection for us you'd like to read?
Well, I do. I went to Selma. I didn't do the 50-mile march, but I went for the James Reeb Memorial Service. Now, you may remember James Reeb.
Remind us, because I don't.
James Reeb was a Unitarian minister working in Boston who went to Selma before the march.
Okay.
And he went with two other Unitarian ministers. The three of them had dinner at a restaurant one night, were coming home, I think it was in March, and they were attacked by a group of men. And James Reeb was killed.
Okay.
And they had a memorial service for Reeb, and I went down for that, and we did a march to the courthouse, and that, a shorter march, but a march that helped set up the next march to Montgomery that came.
The bigger step.
And this is a short story called Iced Tea. And it's unique in the sense that it's written from the perspective of an African American who goes to the march.
Okay.
He's a lawyer.
Oh, he's a lawyer.
He goes to the march. And they do the short march from the Brown Chapel to the county courthouse. And this is a paragraph of his sense at that march. In Brown Chapel, the voices were clear and ringing. They called for the world to take notice, to stand up and be counted. Percy was seated in the center balcony looking down on the chancel. Except for the windows and the brass, we have to cut and go back.
Okay, good.
All right, because I thought I had the right.
That's all right. We're okay. And just note to the editor we want to cut here. That's okay.
Yeah.
Don't rush, take your time. We're all right.
Yeah.
That's a great thing about TV.
Okay.
Okay, ready? You want to start from the beginning?
I can just start with the reading.
Just say
the intro's the same. Start
Okay.
with the reading.
Let George get straight.
Okay, start reading.
They marched on the sidewalk. A wall of people gathered on their left, threatening and pressing in, but held back by an unreassuring police escort and some unseen hand of providence. Except for soft voices here and there singing, "We shall overcome," the protesters were silent. A great muttering of feet pushing forward on the pavement was the only noise. Anonymous were the onlookers to Percy, blurred into passing clumps of muted color on a field of white and khaki. Only one woman caught his eye. Standing in the front row, a limp cotton print dress without shape hung from her shoulders. Her hair, black and stringy, hung straight and oily. She had a tired slouch to her body, as though she had just left off cooking dinner in a hot, steamy kitchen. A boy and a girl pulled at her arms on either side. The boy, about 10, had 3 fingers in his mouth. The girl, about 6, crowded against her mother's leg and clutched a ragged stuffed dog to her narrow chest. It was clear that the woman was dirt poor and worked to the bone. Clear that the man behind her, with a beefy arm on her shoulder, used her badly. Clear that there was no weekly bouffon doux in her past or her future. This woman followed Percy with a look of hatred he had never felt before. As sharp as scissors, those eyes snipped Percy out of the line of marchers, identified him as an individual, and laid on him the blame for everything that was wrong about her life. Everything. Her intent was personal, and Percy received it personally. Then, as he stared back, her hand went up to her face, and 2 fingers rested lightly on her cheek. Her look of accusation gave way to something else. Something of despair appeared in her brown eyes. Theirs is a losing trick, Percy thought. In that despair, he saw a realization that if not for her white skin, she herself would be little more than Selma's kitchen help. As he looked away from her in a fleeting moment of prescience, Percy thought to himself, "Your time is coming, woman. Be ready. Be woman ready. You don't know it now, but this is going to be a very long march."
Very good. Very strong piece. Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Harold, we're going to have to stop now, but like I said, when I promised you, thank you, first of all, for coming up, all right? And minister, author, housing developer for those who need housing. That's not a bad little resume, all right? And we really appreciate you coming. Now, before I end this, I want to promise the audience we will get Reverend Wilson back, because I think there's a million things we haven't touched. So again, I'm Fred McNeil. You've been watching QAC TV, and you've been watching Papa's World, where we've explored Harold Wilson's extremely interesting life, his interesting writings, and we're going to have him back. So thank you very much. My time's up. Thank you for your time.